What's up, everyone? Welcome to this episode of Thought-Provoking Conversations. So I'm coming to you post-recording while I'm editing this video because I realized we forgot to record an intro and an outro for this episode. So you get me now here. It was a great conversation when we brought on another guest who I think you guys would really enjoy. And yeah, we learned a lot. I think you guys will learn a lot, and I'm excited for you guys to dive in. If you end up liking what you hear, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button at the end to keep up to date with what we're dropping. There's a playlist that will be shown at the end as well that will have all the other episodes of Thought-Provoking Conversations if you want to check them out, if this is your first time on the channel. But without further ado, let me dive a little bit into this conversation. So this week we brought in one of our founding chapter brothers here at the Phi Alpha chapter of Sigma Lambda Beta at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. That's a mouthful. This was our first time getting to meet him, the same as it will be for many of you. And it was a blast. We had heard about him. We have never met him, and we just thought, hey, why not? He's a Latino male who's made it pretty big. So let's get him on. Let's see what he's all about. And man, did he deliver. His name is Juan Izaguirre. Make sure you roll that R after his name. If you watch the video, you'll understand why I say that. He's a current director of leadership education and development over at FAU. And he's been there for at that institution for quite a little bit. So he made it out of Nebraska. He's from Nebraska, so I think that's why we relate so much to him. He's from here. He grew up as a Latino male here in Nebraska, and he more than delivered what we were expecting. So I'm excited for you guys to listen. I'll stop talking and go ahead and let you get into the conversation. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Please leave a like and subscribe button if you enjoy what you hear, and we'll see you guys next week. And I promise we won't forget to record an intro and an outro next time. Peace.
Funny part is that as you said, right, about, we want to get to know you, right? What is your story? I think that when I listened to the podcast that y'all sent me from Moy, it made me think about that why piece, one, or I think what motivates you too, and ultimately, like, what is your why? I mean, not what is your why, but who are you, right? Because I ask that question all the time of my undergrads, right? Every time I say, well, who are you? And they're like, well, what you mean? I go, I'm asking who you are. It's easy, but it's so complex, right? And it says because whenever I ask, like, how are y'all doing? And the students react to say, I'm all right. And when they say, what about you, Juan? I'll say, trying to be like you. And it's like, what you mean trying to be like me? Young and in charge, like, yo. We're gonna make it happen. I think for me, Juan Izaguirre, who he is, I am a self-identified Chicano male. I grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska, so lived in Lincoln pretty much all my life. So at the age of about two and a half is when I left Mexico and went to Nebraska. And I think that what's interesting is that as the older I get, the more stories that you hear about this journey. And I say this because, I think it's what you read in the literature of our undocumented students, that you don't know you're undocumented until someone says something. And so I think for me, I'm not gonna say I didn't know that I was undocumented. I just knew that we couldn't go to Mexico for a long time. But it wasn't until the era of Reagan with the amnesty thing that he passed, or that was passed during his presidency, that my mom and I were able to solidify our residency and all this good stuff. But and I bring this up because at the age of 2, when she and I came over, we crossed the border illegally. My uncles passed us as his sisters, as his son, to come over because my dad was already living in Nebraska with my uncle and my aunt already because the work was there. And so we followed suit several years later. And the reason why I say as you get older, you hear more stories is that you hear the behind the scenes stuff of what your parents actually went through this early on. And even though you ask them questions about, what was it like, they still tiptoe it. And I say that no matter how old you get, they still whisper some of this stuff. Or when the parents get together and your uncles get together, they still whisper, and you'd be like, "But I'm old enough to know. Like, you can tell me these stories."
Yeah.
On it. So, but Lincoln, Nebraska is home. So, went to at the time Park Elementary. Went to Everett Junior High that became Park Junior High. A graduate of Lincoln High School. When it came time to choose what college to go to, I always talk about. I was like, I'm out. I'm going to leave Lincoln. I'm going to leave Nebraska. I'm out. Arizona State. Let's go. More Latinos, more Mexicans. I'm going to go to a diverse school. Within 2 minutes, my mom was like, well, who's going to cook for you? Who's going to help you drive your car down there? Who's going to wash your clothes? Who's going to do all this? I'm like, true. So University of Nebraska it was home. And it's home. And I think we still live in the same house I grew up in from the second grade. So we are literally 10 minutes from campus. And my wife and I ran to campus for let's be healthy real fast. And we ran to campus. I'm like, I've never in my history of living in Lincoln, never ran to campus. And we did it one time. And so, and I bring this all up because I think being a upper bound, being a TRIO alum, that's what got me into University of Nebraska, going to through their workshops and going to this. And I said in some of my speeches in that. So being a young Chicano from Lincoln, Nebraska, growing up with University of Nebraska, got my bachelor's degree in secondary education. So for a long time, I'm gonna be a high school teacher, and I'll go motivate you to go to college. You're gonna go to college. Was my motto, was everything. I think that what did it for me was watching Stand and Deliver. I was like, I'm gonna be Mr. Escalante. I'm gonna be the finger man. But I'm gonna teach you through social studies and history. That's what I liked mostly, and it's what I took a lot of at UNL. Super involved. Worked in admissions with Steve Reyes, my compadre, and my line brother. At that, so we got to work together, and by then I was like, my mentor, who was our boss, was like, "Hey, have you thought about this as a career? Is that you can work at a university?" I was like, "No." So that bit the bug. And from there, since we would always do admissions trips for transfer students at Kansas, I got to meet some of the people from the University of Kansas. And at the same time, we did have a colony of men there that eventually became a chapter. But I was like, I knew somebody there, so I was able to easily say, "Hey, I'm going to go to Kansas." Mm-hmm. And so upon graduation, I graduated in the summer of 2001. Which is like ages ago. But graduated from there. It was on a Friday, Saturday. And the next week, I was packing my stuff and moving to Lawrence, Kansas, where I got my master's degree in higher education administration, and was there for almost 10 years. And the permission I asked from my parents, obviously we still, you can be old, but you still ask permission from your parents.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Permission from me was, let me go study for 2 years at Kansas, and I'll be back. And so 2 years became 9 years that I was there. And so loved my time at the University of Kansas through the different jobs I had and different roles and responsibilities that I had. And in the fall of 2010, I actually moved down to South Florida and have been here since. And so I think, going through the whole thing, that growing up in Lincoln, Nebraska, being that, and me throwing out numbers, right? Being that 95% Mexican neighborhood, being that that's all I knew, going to Kansas, having the same influence to them, moving down to South Florida, where I'm 5% of the Latino population down here, and navigating where the best Mexican restaurants and the real Mexican restaurants, right? The one you could taste the rice in the frijoles or whatever, but the ones you could really taste the rice, and be like, yeah, you're gonna be. I'm gonna come back to you and what have you. But been here since then. So I currently serve as the director of our Leadership Education and Development Office, or LEAD, where I've been in that role since last summer, but been in the office for the past about 4 years or so. So this fall, I'll be celebrating officially 10 years working at FAU. So everything happens for a reason. Happily married, got 3 kids. One that is due in the next few weeks. So one of the reasons why I asked to do the earlier session was just in case.
Just in case, yeah.
Just in case, like later on, I'd be like, no, I can't do that date. Like, be flexible. Overall, but yeah, in a long answer, Nate, a long answer for you, your deep question. That's who Juan is.
That's what's up, man. I appreciate you for sharing with that. That was I mean, it was a long, but it was a great answer. I think it definitely captures kind of a lot of, you know, the influences that you may have had. And one question for me is like, what how do I want to phrase this? So when you were at Kansas and was it kind of your plan to go and get a PhD? Like afterwards, like you kind of had the idea like, hey, you know, I got my master's. Let me see how far I can go. You know what I mean? Like at what point where you were like, okay, I've already done, you know, 6 years at a minimum. I don't know how long your master's was. It could have been 2, it could have been 3. So that would change the numbers a little bit. But when did you decide that you wanted to come back for another piece of the pie? Because it's
Right, because we always talk about the papelito, right? The power of the papelito. At least, you know, I hope that your administrators or the people you look up to talk to you all about or keep talking to you about the papelito, right? Because I always tell my Latino students, it's about the papelito. No one can take that, right? And so I think as a first generation college student, and I bring up the upper bound and that and what have you, because I think that's what guided me into higher ed first and foremost, and saying that I can go to it. And I joke around that one of the upper bound programs that we went to on a Saturday as high school students was the admissions process. How do you apply for college and how do you make this happen? And so I joke around because, you know, you fill out the application and here you are, it's a prep workshop. So we're going to practice. And so you fill out the application, you type up something on the keyboard, be like, I feel good about this one. No proofreading, no like, hey, look at my stuff. Like, does my essay look great? Would you accept me if you were a recruiter, right? Typed it up. They were like, okay, let's collect these, blah, blah, blah. Next session, we'll have a real one. And, you know, you don't do nothing about it until I got a letter later on that says, congratulations, you've been admitted to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hey, upper bound, I got this letter. When did we do this? Because I don't remember applying by myself. I remember a workshop, but not by myself on it. And I bring this up because I think that one of the things that maneuvering my time at University of Nebraska, it wasn't a dream of mine to get a master's. I think ultimately at first I'm gonna be that high school teacher. Let's go to college. How can I get you there? Let's do what we have to do to get you to where you want to be. And so I think once we got there, once I got that bite of I work in the office of admissions, I'm recruiting students and specifically students of color. How do I get you to come to university and navigate and understand what's all expected for you? That I got that bug of it. And I bring up my mentor, and this is all like now it's gonna be public for everyone to see. Gotta highlight Dr. Gooch on this, but my mentor took me to the graduate college at the University of Nebraska, right? Because she was also at school at the time, or taking a class. And so she introduced me to like the office staff. She introduced me to like the directors and the deans in the office. She's like, this is Juan, star student, blah, blah, blah. And some of them were like, oh, we've heard of you. And I'm like, I don't know who you are, but hope it's good things. But she literally said, if he applies here for his master's degree, do not accept it. He needs to leave. And it's one of those things like, no, like,
what do you mean?
You know, what you mean? Like Nebraska, you know, go big red. Nebraska is home. Like I'm overly involved in here. Y'all know me, I guess. Home is like 10 minutes. It's a 10-minute drive, but no, like what? And so, which led me to the one and only school that I applied to was the University of Kansas. And I was even late with one of my letters of rec on that application process. But lo and behold, I got it. And I think, and I bring up the story about being a high school thing, because for me it was get my bachelor's, go teach, and then go back and get a master's degree. And become a star teacher, maybe become vice principal, and maybe, you know, if something happens, principal. But that was like capped. That was it. And so once I got my master's degree, they talked about the PhD program, but it was something that was told to you that and which I appreciated still, in that if you plan to graduate in May and you want to apply for the doc program, don't plan to apply right away. You need to get years of experience under your belt. And then once you got years of experience, at least 5, then come back and enroll in the course, and then we'll talk about PhD. And so that always stuck in my mindset of, okay, you need at least 5 years before I come back officially. Cool. And it's one of those things, the I wish factors. And I wish I would have paid that little smidge where they say something, you're like, huh, what? That wish I would have paid attention, that you could take classes and not be degree seeking. And as long as you take so many classes, it can go to your degree, so that when you actually apply, you have maybe 12 credit hours or so under your belt to be like, oh, I've accrued these, pull them with me, let's make it happen. So I wish I would have paid attention to that, because I could have been done sooner, a whole lot sooner rather than later. And so for me, my bug, and so I knew that I wanted to get it. And I think that in higher ed, if you want to become a dean of students, a vice president, or in between an assistant and associate vice president, you definitely need the 3 letters behind your name. You definitely need that next papelito as well. And so one thing that I kept doing, and so that latter half of my time at KU, it became like, hey, I'm applying for a job. So I'm applying for the jobs elsewhere. I also have the opportunity to apply for the doc program. But what if I get into, and at the time I looked at it from a financial point of view, right? Well, what if I get this job and I spent money on my application and I spent money on my transcripts? That's just, I'm not going to get it. But what if I apply and I don't get the job? Then I'll be okay. So I always apply for a job. I guess I applied for a job, make it sound like I was trying to get out. I wasn't trying to get out. My other mentor was like, it's time for you to go. And I'll say that. So I think as I apply for these jobs, I look at the day and be like, okay, if I don't get the job, and it was about the same time frame. And so for me, I wouldn't get the job and be like, dang, I missed the deadline. Okay, next year, a new job came up, hot, I'm ready, let's go. I'll apply for the job, this. And so ultimately, as I applied for the job at FAU, it was that. I was like, okay, this for real. Like, if I don't get this job at Florida Atlantic University, I'm going back to school. I'm done. No more excuses. It's going to happen. And so, ultimately, when they said, oh, we have an internal candidate at FAU, I was like, well, it's done. I'm going back to school. It's whatever. But when they actually called me and said, hey, we want to offer you the position, I'm like, oh, snap. Like, no, for real. Like, wait. Like, I ain't ready. But it came down here. And so I think ultimately, for me, it was, let me get my feet wet here. Let me get the feel for what this director role is at this, I'll say a very, very diverse school, very diverse population, right? We are now a Hispanic serving institution. We're points shy away from becoming a multicultural student, a minority serving institution, I think is the word, or an MSI. So we're very close to that. So trying to navigate what an Office of Multicultural Affairs looks like at a very diverse school, and trying to navigate this and navigate a new position, new staff, and what have you. So I was like, okay, school's going to wait. And so I say, and for me, and I've joked around in the past with friends and said what got me to say I need to go back to school is I ran out of excuses of like later, or I'm applying for a job, or now it's not the right time. I think a friend sent me an email that said, you're always going to say now is not the time. I don't have time. But you just had to buckle down. And I think that it was something that, and as my academic advisor is a beta, is someone who I've seen, someone who is younger than me, who I've seen come through the organization. That is, when he arrived, he said to me, Juan, when are we going to get you here? It was like, I have no excuse to say, hold on, I got nothing. But it's one of the things that the brother helped me and guided me through the application process, guided me through the whole interview process. I didn't know you had to interview to get into the program. So guided me through the interview, and has been with me since that day one. So he's my academic advisor, and he's also my pretty much like my dissertation chair that's going to help me through this process. And so, in lack of better words, I haven't left school. I think as my family will say, that like he's still in school. um, but I think it's a whole different mindset of getting these three and knowing that it's a small minority of a percentage of Latino males that have this doctorate. And not to say I'm gonna bump it up to like a huge 5% or 10%, but it's a small minority that has this. And to say that, wow, I have three letters next to my name, and it's not a medical doctor. Not to say that's not important, but to say that, wow, I am a Dr. Izaguirre, and I'm gonna make you really roll your R's when you say this last name. But that's what ultimately gave me that bite kind of stuff to say, I'm done. I'm out of excuses. Let's go. We got to pursue this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, wow, I totally feel that. I'm all about, like, when I was applying to get into medical school, and just with every step, I think as the deadline was coming closer, I would have my application like close to being done. Like, I'm talking about literally just like this much effort, but then I didn't want to do it. Like, some would stop me, man, and maybe it was just like my internal belief that I wasn't gonna get into school. Like, I only applied to 2 schools, right? And the average, at least what Google says is the average, like what people apply to medical school is like 12. So I was way below average. One, because I couldn't afford it, and that was my problem. I was like, I couldn't really afford it, and I was like, I can't really apply to a school I don't care about. That was me being real honest, and I was like, okay, but something would always stop me. And so I think it's really cool that you shared that kind of perspective, because it's true. And I think the fact that you also bring up that there is such a small like percentage of Latino males that get that PhD after their name, right? That little doctor title, right? It's something that I've been like contemplating a lot, because it's like, what do you think prevents like, I guess, our population from getting to that point, right? So, like, I guess I kind of want to hear your perspective of like, what do you think are like the obstacles that Latino kind of people kind of face in getting into higher education? Because I know plenty of Latinos that don't graduate high school. I know plenty that don't graduate college. And after that, it becomes like a small subsection of a subsection that actually makes it there. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's not even guaranteed success, because it's you still got to pass everything, right? So it's like, what do you think really slows people down?
I think there's a lot of stuff, and I think that the worst part is you're gonna ask me this, and I got my notes in the sala with everything, right? and I say this because I think my study is focusing on Latino. My dissertation is focusing on Latino males, right? And more specifically, is that in the leadership, their engagement in leadership, and what have you. But I think ultimately, when we think about our Latino males, even just our Latino students, right? I would say that our Latino Latinx students is the huge imposter syndrome, right? It's something that you were alluding to, is the the smidge of I got this, but then the deadline's there and be like, no, I'm good, kind of stuff. Or then the little voice inside our head becomes huge. It's like, you ain't gonna make it, you ain't gonna do this. Right. And I remember as a master's student, I remember one of our advisors, she's mad cool. I'm not going to take away from that. Right. But I remember her telling me, Juan, you write like you talk. And so I'm like, well, that's me. Tough. That's how I am. And I say this because coming from, and not to say that y'all's majors are any stronger or weaker than mine was, by no means. Right. But I think that being in the teachers college at the time, and I know they have a new name, so I apologize for that, but being in the teachers college at the time, when we had to write like reflection essays or what have you, 5 to 7 pages, right? Get to the point. 10, I think my longest paper ever was maybe 12 pages. If, and that was with the references. So, nowadays, like whatever. So going to a master's program right away, and they were like, in 15 pages, tell us your response. And I'm like, I could tell you in 5. Why do I need to give you 12? but and I say this because I think that little voice got inside my head big time, say, but I write like I talk because I want you to know that that's me. I don't want to sound fake in my papers, and because if I sound, scholarly and very and infused with the academia voice and what have you, be like, that's not Juan. So but I think that as I go through this whole doc program, that little voice is still inside of me. The whole imposter syndrome is still there of am I good enough? Am I gonna make it? And what have you. But I think that as Latino males, culturally we get told don't ask for help. You got this. You're on your own. Ask Familia for everything. Familia will either be your biggest advocate, your biggest cheerleader, or they'll be your biggest challenge to get over at the same time. And so I think part of the other thing is who's holding you accountable on this, right? And so I'll say when you think of us as fraternity brothers, right? Thinking about who got you past that finish line to be like, don't quit, we gonna get there, right? And once you became that brother, who got you to that next semester, be like, yo, we made it, but did you earn your letters again today? Did you earn it tomorrow? Kind of stuff, right? The late night is supposed to be study nights, but you all lollygag. But all those but who's holding you accountable? Who's your go-to people, right? And really saying, yo, I need help. Help me, right? And I think at the same time, it's finding that mentor that can really challenge you, right? And I think that when you can find a mentor that's going to challenge you and support you at the same time, you got someone that you can make a connect with, either a big brother within your organization, someone across the field, an administrator, a staff member, but who's going to challenge you? And something that I took from my mentor, Dr. Gooch, early on was being asked, what kind of mentor do you want me to be? And I use that same question when I have a student ask me, can you be my mentor? And I ask, because I take mentorship serious. Mm-hmm. And so because I've had students just throw it around, what's my mentor? And I'll look at them like, I don't even know who you are. Like, how am I supposed to be your mentor? But I ask students, like, you want me to be a mentor? What role do you want me to be? Do you want me to be the cheerleader? Like, you got this, blah, blah, blah? Or do you want me to be like, just raw with it and be like, yo, you suck. And let me tell you why you suck. But let me also tell you why we suck together and what have you. So that this way, when you hear from me. But I think especially with our Latino male students and our undergrads is really being the advocate to be like, yo, we in the struggle together kind of stuff. Let me take off my title. Let me take off a fancy title. Let me be Juan with you for a second. Let's be raw with this. Where do we mess up? How do we do this? And so if we got to laugh together, if we got to cry together, or if we just got to like shoot the shit, hey, let's be real with this kind of stuff. So I think for us as Latinos, it's finding who that mentor can be. It does not have to be someone who looks like you or speaks the same language, but someone that you can truly find a connection with. And so Dr. Gooch, being a Black woman, was that person who challenged us all the time. And she served as an advisor for MASA for a year or two. It really challenged us. And we were like, yo, we do this all the time. Like, leave us alone. But she took it to she really took us to another level as undergraduate students. Mm-hmm. And she got heat from others about it as well. Mm-hmm. But someone that can challenge you to be there, to get out of your head, to be like, yo, you earned your right to be here kind of stuff. And I think that as you face this little voice every day, we're going to have the little voice. But I think that as you lean on who is your accountability group, who's your go-to, right? And if it's a room full of 20 people, great. If it's 2 people, great. But who's the accountability group that you can get to whatever finish line you're going to be and you want to get to and stuff like that. So that if you say, hey, my goal is to apply to medical school. Well, you know what, how can I help you get there? What do you need from me? My goal is to graduate. Okay, cool. When do you want to graduate? The university says you're going to mess up our metrics if you graduate in 8 years. But if that's the time that you need, let me get you to where you need to be faster, hopefully. But what is it that you need from me as an accountability person? But also be expecting that, hey, if you're asking for help, be reciprocal, be like, I need you to help me as well. If I help you, you got to help me. And then together we'll help each other, make it all work out overall. And I think that for some of our young men who may finish college and they may not go to college right away, it's just figuring out, hey, it may not be the best time right now. But really, again, that accountability piece of when is it, you're not gonna say when is it a good time ever, but I think figuring out how can I make sure that you remain in school. If school is something that you want to do, how can I help you get there? If we started at the 2 year at the community college, great. Let's start there. Let's get some of the stuff off. You know, if we can't afford it, cool. Let's make it happen at the community college where we can afford some classes, where we can do some things to make things happen. Overall, my biggest thing is that don't let the price tag scare you. It scares everybody, especially if I hear y'all tell me how much tuition is now versus what I tell you what I paid as an undergraduate student, y'all be mad. But but I bring this up because I think as Latinos, we're fast to have, you know, padrinos for quinceañeras, for marriages and weddings and what have you. But when we think about school, we don't think about, hey, can I get a padrino every semester or a madrina every semester to be like, hey, you got me for this biology book that cost $350 used.
Used.
Right, used at that. But how can you help me get through college? Because I mean, at the end of it, yes, your paper is going to have your name on it. For each paper that you get is going to have your name on it. But you will know who truly helped you get that name on there. It won't be the signatures on that little piece of paper, but whose signatures are really truly on that little piece of paper.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I definitely related to a lot of the things that you said, but I have a couple of more questions, Irvin.
Go ahead.
But if you want to ask any of them, I'll let you go because Irvin's a really good listener, and he'll just listen this whole time. So I'm trying to get him up here because I think he usually has like a different perspective than I do when asking questions. So, do you have anything, Irvin?
Yeah. First of all, yeah, I agree with a lot of what you've said. It kind of resonates a lot, and it just kind of has me smiling because I was like, you're putting words to a lot of things that I've thought about but haven't been able to kind of verbalize. So that really helps. So thank you for that.
No worries.
I guess the thing that I wanted to hit on was, so both Yaid and I also grew up in Nebraska. Yaid's from very small town Nebraska, you know, Julian, Nebraska, shout out. And I'm from Grand Island.
Okay.
So, you know, we're already at a smaller community, right? Like I said, Hispanic community, we're already small here in the state of Nebraska, right? And then heading into the University of Nebraska, being a predominantly white institution, you know, it was at times overwhelming, you know, of how little people there were that looked like you. And it took a while for us to be able to find, like, you know, our groups, our people who we could really click with or who we could rely on. So I was just kind of wondering, what sort of things did you encounter during your undergrad here, kind of transversing through that dynamic?
Oh, it's such a long time ago, brother. Such a long time ago. I think for me, what I would say what I got lucky with is that for me, MASA has always been there, right? The Mexican American Student Association. It's always been in the community. It's always been helping out. So remembering that these kids that we don't know who they are kind of stuff will always come to the kermeses at the church, would always show up at different things, or would host large events that we would go to as college kids or as high school kids, excuse me, and figuring out, hey, some of them are profound mentors. So, hey, I know you got a connection. So at least I know somebody as I got there. So I think that getting to the University of Nebraska, it was finding MASA right away and be like, yes, I want to be a member. And so I think that if you've done your MASA history, back in the late 90s, when I was in college, MASA was in the middle of a boycott with the Office of Multicultural Affairs. And so when you think of this piece of my summer bridge program told me use the Multicultural Affairs Office for your academic needs and your resources and your services. But now I'm a member of MASA, and MASA is telling me we have a boycott. We don't do anything with the office. Like, well, snap! What do I do?
Where do I go?
Where I go? Right? The home is now shut down. If I want to be with the cool kids, and the cool kids ain't going to the house, okay. But but I say this. But even though MASA, we had that boycott, it was still, if you as a student need to use the services and programs for free, then you need to use the services and programs for free. And so when you think of not having that, you know, the dot matrix printers back in the day and stuff, I'm sure they outdate you all. But I think when you have these things, it's figuring out where I need to go to get that computer, where I go to access my email and my internet and what have you. If I need to use the office, I'll need to use Office. So I think within me is finding those resources. And I think that through the old program, Summer Institute for Promising Scholars, or SIPS, I got connected with Dr. Tim Alvarez, who's now at a 2-year college in Colorado, right? And so he was my SIPS mentor in that first year mentor, and he was the one that when I started University of Nebraska, I was majoring in Latin American Studies because I was going to be a Latino history teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, you're in the College of Arts and Sciences, and you want to be a teacher, so you should be in the Teachers College, right? And I was like, I don't know, sure, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is a story for later. But I think that when you think of that, is what having him there and as a Latino male got me to be like, yo, I can connect with you on some things, right? And him telling the story of how he grew up in Western Nebraska, in Scottsdale, and be like, okay, cool, this is was there, versus to me still living at home, living in the community, and being involved within the Latino population, the Mexican population there in the city. I still had home base of, I go home every night, sleep in my own bed, sleep in my, have my own food and have my own everything, and then at the same time, go to Spanish mass on Sunday with it's still consider everything. And then whatever nights we met as Masa, I saw my peoples there. I hung out with my peoples in the union and making it happen. So I always had that population, but from SIPS, I was able to connect with other students of color and really establish a pocket and establish a friendship to go through these things. And so as Masa got, as we navigate through this boycott, got allies and got everyone to assist and got others to assist, and we ended it really working with the other organizations that were at the time in existence and really saying, how can we help each other make differences on campus? So really connecting, became a member of African People's Union back in the day, and trying, I guess, learning from different viewpoints of what are the stances of students of color at UNO, and trying to figure those out, going to conferences every year with Masa, making our trek to Chicago for the United States Hispanic Leadership Conference, and really saying like, yo, we down for the cause. Yes, let's rally, brown power, brown pride. Let's do this, right? It really navigated that piece. And I think that as you saw students come and go, there was always those upperclassmen that were like, I got you. Let's make sure that you graduate. Let's make sure you stay here. And definitely we saw a lot of students leave as well. But you also, I think that as you reflect on, you also see a lot of students that came in with and were like, I need to explore more who I am, and I want to join MONS. I want to join these other organizations of color to say, hey, help me identify who I am. I have questions, but I want to know this and maneuvering this, or finally taking culturally based classes. So enrolling in so many Chicano studies courses, and really learning more about the history, really learning more notes. And I think those were the teachers that really, truly held you as a brown student accountable. On a different level, which I've learned to do with my Latino students, but they really held you to a different level. So you just couldn't write a BS paper because they would call it on you, and be like, no, come see me. We're gonna talk about your paper that you just submitted.
Oh, yeah, no.
Trust, I gotta see me paper. And I talk about it, I gotta see me paper. So, so I had to have that conversation with the late Dr. Grajeda in one of my classes. But I think that having those pockets and having that helped me navigate what that 3-4% Latino at UNO at the time was all about, and finding our pockets. I think through that, it shrunk UNO to what it was, to what helped me navigate and be like, I know the system. I don't know it 100%, but I know the system and can work with it and manipulate some of the stuff if needed, to work with others.
Cool. Well, yeah. I think that's I mean, that definitely makes a lot of sense, and I can relate to it in a lot of different ways. And I guess one thing I kind of want you to clarify for me really quick is we asked Moy the same question, and now we're gonna ask you this question because I think it's a really good question because you talked a lot about, helping, especially the students that you work with now, like, what do you want to see from me as a mentor? And what I'm really trying to figure out is you kind of want them to define what success is going to be for them, right? So in a way, I want you to kind of define like what success means to you, and kind of yeah. So like, what does success mean, you know, in your perspective?
Dang, I think I saw the interview with more like he pulled out like some definition and researchers say. Kind of stuff. I think, what if we're gonna this whole like storytelling, right? I think when we think of the of what success means, I think it's ultimately is you achieving your goals, right? As small as they may be to as big as they may be. And I look at it from you graduate from high school to go to college is a success. You graduate from college in 4, 5, 6 years is a success. You actually waking up in the morning and not hitting snooze is a success. On it, you passing a class that you were like freaking out about, because I think that, and I say this because I think that we as students of color really go through them and do the math before we actually do the work, right? Be like, okay, I just got to get a 76% on the final, and I got a C. A C means complete. A D means diploma. I'm set. I'm gonna make it happen. On it. So I think that is a success. I think that staying in college every day is a success. I think you waking up in the morning, going to sleep every day is a success. And I think that as for me, maneuvering this role of being a director at an institution of higher education, of being a partner, of being a parent, of being a doc student, and balancing that, even though there's late nights and like hella late nights and hella early mornings, I see it as a success overall in navigating this. I think especially now during this pandemic and knowing that we are surviving at this juncture and what have you, is a success that you can say, yo, it was a long day at home while I'm working, but in the background I got the kids going, I got everything. It's a balance. So it's a success from that point overall. Not going to hit you with what research says and according to the authors.
Yeah, I think it's important really to one, just define success for yourself, because I think it kind of gives you a certain level of ownership and power just over, you know, what success means. Because I think far too often people choose a path because they believe that's what people want them to do, right? That's what they think, you know, success as a term that's defined outside of you, that's what they lead you to believe, right? And you know, you come to realize that if it doesn't really make you happy, like, is it really a success, you know, at the end of the day? So I think it's really an important question, and it's one I really enjoy asking, because we get such interesting answers from people, because it's such a subjective thing to really like truly take success and define it for yourself, because I think there's, you know, a lot of power in that. And I think Irvin's really good about this, because he has a thing about defining everything from his own perspective. So right. I think that's something that, you know, I've kind of picked up from Irvin, and that I just really like seeing, because it, you know, it just brings a different kind of power to the individual of like finding out what success truly means for them, you know. So I think that's awesome.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. We also want to give you the opportunity to ask us anything if you'd like. We're just kind of bombarding you with questions, and we can keep going if you'd like, but we do want to open it up for you to ask anything too, if you'd like.
I can't think of any questions right now. Just don't put me on the spot. Like, you already got to come with it. Be like, yo, let me ask these questions. No, go ahead.
Irvin, you got anything?
Yeah. So, you know, you kind of hit on this earlier, how sometimes our families, especially like in a Latino family, they can either be your biggest supporters or they can be the ones that hold you back the most. You know, let's see, how do I want to ask it? Like, what do you think is the best? Like, our culture revolves around so much around family, right? And leaving to go to college, when you go to a different city, you know, when you're stepping out of completely where you're from, can be so difficult because you're so attached to that piece. So how do you help students kind of get through that transition, at least to start with, or help them kind of ease them in and stuff like that?
Oh, heavy question. Well, I think we'll cover from different aspects. And I think that as you were asking me this, I'm like, my question for you is going to be, you know, about your why. But I think ultimately it's, you know, what are your values, right? Because as Latinos, we're going to say we value family. It's all about the family, right? Everything to do for the family. I think that as Latino males, I think sometimes we get the opportunity to come and go as we please, right? And in the home, if we want to go to school, cool, you can go, but you still have some obligations back, right? That you got to give back to the family. And at the same time, it's one of those things of that guilt of I'm, an hour away, I'm 30 minutes away, a flight and a half away from home, and how does this work out? And so I think it's truly looking inside of who you are, right? And what your dreams and aspirations are going to be, but how you can manipulate some of these storytelling things of with our families to say, allow me to go to school, allow me to go to college. It will not just benefit me, it will benefit us. We're going to make this happen. And of course, sometimes it's that we as Latinos may not have all the answers to all the questions that we're going to ask, right? Help me out with this financial aid packet. As a first gen, you may not know anything about no first aid. Like I can't remember my FAFSA password. Kind of stuff. But and I think or looking to find somebody, hoping you can find somebody that can be in your corner to go to meet with your parents. And I say this because I think as going through Upper Bound, I did have someone that could speak Spanish, that could come to my house and talk to my parents about what is financial aid, what does the packet look like, what is the application process. And I think that as much as Latinos, we look at success means buying you a house, buying you a car, having kids, and having a partner. It's also identifying that, yes, I want a house, but I know that there's a different route for me to make happen that can happen later on. Maybe at the same time, but happen later on. My hustle is going to be a little different at the same time. And really going through that piece. And I think that as we look at these values is figuring out what are these core values that I have, right? And so for me, leaving the University of Nebraska with my bachelor's and going to the University of Kansas, which is, a little over 3 hour drive from Lincoln to Lawrence, and figuring out, hey, it's 3 hours. Just like y'all would say, I'm far enough from home, but close enough if I need to go home, kind of stuff. And that first semester was rough. There was things that happened with the family, with the extended family. That was like, yo, I gotta go. Like, do I really want to stay here? And those at the table were like, yes, you're going to stay here. You ain't leaving anytime soon, kind of stuff. But I think that as you think about this, it's like, hey, who's there going to help me navigate this piece? Who's going to let me vent if I need to vent and do this kind of stuff on this overall? And I think that as I left the Midwest to come to South Florida, it was that true thing of, hey, I'm leaving. Like, I got this job. I'm by myself right now. Like, yo, my family is going to be a good 24, 25 hour drive, or a flight and a half, maybe 2 flight connection flights, like away from where I need to be. Like, what, how is this going to work out? And so for me, it was a huge test of if I can do this on my own, I got this. But for my parents, they translated into the forms of, when I left Mexico and left my parents, I went by myself. So Mijo was doing this just the same way. That, I had to be ready, that just like my parents were when I left for the first time, I need to be mentally prepared that they're leaving for whichever dream, your dream, my dream, the American dream kind of stuff, that we're actually leaving this. But I think that as you grow, then that you got to figure out what are these values that you hold near and dear to who you are, and figuring out like, hey, how much of my family do I sacrifice? Because I think family is a huge value that we can talk about, but at the same time, is how do we define this, right? And I think, yeah, like you said earlier, right? Each one of you got questions, but it's just worded differently. So all 3 of us can say we value family, but each one of our definitions of what family is going to be very complex. But it's just a simple word, right? And so I think it's figuring out how do we do this, but at the same time, when we go back to our communities and talk to our young brothers and sisters and be like, we can leave. It's okay to leave. Mapai, let them go. It's going to be all right. Kind of stuff. You'll see the fruits of the labor later. We'll cry every night, if we got to, but we'll make it happen. And I think my partner cracks on me because she's like, when Juan talks to his parents, because it's either Sunday or Wednesday, it's religiously, we speak on those 2 days, but that's our catch-up time. kind of stuff. So still keeping in the form of one part of my definition of family, but then with my immediate family now, as a father and a husband, it's now that my definition has changed, and how do we make it work overall?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think that's awesome. Yeah, like you were saying, like being first gen, like it's just scary because I feel like being a first gen Latino student is, it's different than being a first gen of other cultures. At least I feel like that, especially because a lot of times there's a language barrier, right? And you have no idea like how to even go about that. So yeah, I think that was really cool.
Right. I think that one conversation that we had in one of our sessions was that you're a first generation alum, right? Because you never shake it. It's part of your identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so as you navigate your undergraduate, you're a first gen undergrad student.
Mm-hmm.
When you move into the master's program, you're a first gen master's student, or you're a first gen medical school student, because it's all brand new to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything is always going to be brand new. What you thought you knew, so still don't know if they do this, right? But going from Nebraska, being able to charge my tuition, be able to charge my books to my tuition and payment and all this kind of stuff, I was like, it's just normal. Go to KU and I go to pay for my books and they say cash, check, or charge. And I'm like, charge it to my account. I'll pay for it with my tuition dollars. And they're like, no, like it doesn't work that way. Cash, cash, check, or charge. I'm like, oh damn, like you lucky I got some. I got my checkbook with me. Thank you. But you navigate that piece. You navigate that. Hey, I need to be done. Like I'm in a class for 3 hours at a time. Like serious. So like this is like full time changes differently for different programs. So definitely, I think you don't ever shake it. You're always going to have that first gen identity around you. If it's in your back pocket, it's there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I know exactly what you mean, because like Irvin said, I was born in Texas, right? I was born in Houston, and we moved up to Nebraska when I was around 3 years old. So that's why I kind of say I'm from Nebraska, right? Because I barely remember Texas. I got nothing really. But like when it was finally, so I got accepted into the 2 medical schools that I applied to. Somehow I got into both of them, right? But I already knew that the one here in Maryland, which is where I'm at now, was the one that I was going to go into. And like I'm just I'm really, like you just said it so casually, and I think it's super different, right? Because I have a little sister and she's about to graduate high school, and her life is way different than mine was, right? And just the male female difference in just our culture, right? And so you said, you were like, yeah, we can leave the house really whenever we want, and as long as ideally we come home before like 2 a.m, like our parents aren't gonna be like, hey, where were you? Or like they're gonna call you and be like, hey, are you coming home? Because my mom would do that, right? She'd call me and she'd be like, hey, son las 2 de la mañana, like, are you gonna come home? And I'd be like, I'm on my way, Mom, stop, I'm sorry. You know what I mean? And I was old. I was 20 years old already, and she was still calling me, and it's like, it's one of those things where it was so different for me. And when I finally decided, like, I think it's finally time for me to leave Nebraska. I'm gonna go to Maryland because they're paying for me to go to medical school, and they're paying me to just like as a whole salary job. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's literally, like, I'm sorry, but you guys can't help me pay for something, and I don't expect you to help me to pay for something that is going to cost 300, 400K. You know what I mean? It's expensive, because medical school is expensive. Higher education is expensive everywhere. And so it was like, I got to walk away. And it's one of those things where I'm so far away from the rest of my family. Like, I was just talking to my mom for like 2 hours afterwards. And I used to never like talk on the phone, right? When I lived in Nebraska, I would be like, oh, I'm only like a drive away. It's no big problem. Like, I'll just go see him sometime, right? But then I would never do it. And now, like, she called me on Sunday, but I had midterms this week. So I was like, hey, Mom, like, I'm going to call you on Wednesday. Like, just give me a little bit, right? Like, I'll call you back, I promise. And before, like, I would have just forgotten about it, right? I would have just done something else because I was in Nebraska. It was close. It's like, it's whatever, right? But now, like, I called her back and we just talked for 2 hours, just chatting up, right? And that's not something that I usually ever did before. And so I think it's something that's, I don't know, you just captured it really well. And I think it's really important because, like you said, like, I think one, my definition of family has evolved over time. You know,
Right.
like I thought I valued it before, but now I left, and I'm like, yo, I value it so much more than I did when I was back in Nebraska. I was like, yo, I wish I could be back home so I could just like go to my mom's house and have some chicharrones con like frijoles, man. You know what I mean? It's just some casual, right, with some homemade tortillas, and it's like it's those little things, right, that really
Right.
make me miss home. And so I think that's definitely like a really big point, man. So I really appreciate you for sharing.
No worries. No worries. Yes, definitely. So, and I think as we think of this, let me ask you both then, what is your why? And I ask this because I think that as we think of like, working with our students within our office, we always, part of our workshops is that why. What is that purpose? What gets you up in the morning? What lets you go to sleep, right? But what is your why? What is that purpose that you live, breathe, eat each and every day?
Arvin, do you want to go first? I'm formulating my answer right now.
Yeah. So we've kind of been exploring that topic. This is our episode 8, I believe, of us doing these conversations, and we've kind of explored different things. And one episode that we had was kind of around like what we build our self-worth around, right? And then we delved into kind of like our why and why we kind of do what we do. And for me, it always went back to I pursue helping lessen the suffering of others, right? Like I just want to put myself in positions where I can just help other people like me that were, first generation and just didn't know what they were doing. I just kind of want to help those people, basically just help myself, because I was fortunate enough to have really good mentors growing up that I just want to be able to be that person for someone else.
Right.
So I think a lot of my why just revolves around how can I best help my fellow Latino people. And I kind of summed that up really fast, and now Yair, I didn't give Yair enough time to think there.
He's over there still thinking. I'm looking at
yeah. He's always too concise, and this is the thing that's the difference between me and him, because I take like 45 minutes to get to the point. So, but I'll try to make it quick.
Storytellers, that's all.
I don't know about that, but hey, I mean, so my why, and I think Irvin really captured this perfectly in saying that it's something that we've been exploring a pretty tremendous amount, and I'm surprised at how much it's evolved over time, because it's one of those things, because like my mom tells me this story, right? And she tells me, she's like, ever since you were a little kid, you always said you wanted to be two things: a soldier and a doctor. And that's what you would say since you were a little kid. And so now I'm a lieutenant in medical school, right? So it's I'm doing dream, right? And it was something really, really interesting when I made it to this point, right? And I was like, okay, I got it, but now what? And it was such a weird feeling of making to this point and thinking, it's like, okay, I achieved success, but now what else? You know what I mean? And it scared me, because one, I didn't have a great answer for it, and then two, I was like, well, what can I do with this? And Irvin and I have talked quite a bit, and we've kind of identified that him growing up was way different than me growing up. Like, he grew up in Grand Island. I grew up in Julian, Nebraska, with a little village population of like 50 people. So I was one of 50. You know what I'm saying? I was the only Mexican around for such a long distance, and so I went to a school where I was the only Mexican. Like, my older sister, while she was still in school with me, she was 7 years older than me, and then my little sister, who's 5 years younger than me. So, like, other than that, that was really it. Like, in terms of like brown people, right? You know what I'm saying? And so, it was one of those things where it was like, it was so different. Like, I I encountered a lot of things like going through school, and one of them was like I was kind of like a chameleon. I kind of fit in where I needed to fit in, right? But I never really think I took the time to explore myself and the things that I wanted and the things that I wanted to do. And it wasn't until now that I've had that chance, right? Because all I'm doing is school, and while you're doing in school, you're sitting a lot of your time is just kind of sitting by yourself, doing your work, and there's a lot of thoughts that come into your head, and one of those things is I've kind of tried to like just like lay him out, talk to him, and that's kind of what I feel like I do here. And I don't know if Irvin has like a different agenda, but like I just kind of tell him like what's on my mind, right? And it's led me to a lot of things, and I think I really enjoyed like how Irvin said it, where he just he wants to be that mentor for somebody. And for me, at least until I got to college, I didn't really have a mentor. I had people, and I'm not going to say I had bad people in my life, right? Because that's doing them a disservice, because I think I had positive people in my life. However, it was like, if you succeed, you succeed. But if you don't, it's kind of on you. You know what I mean? It was like one of those things where it looked like I had my stuff together, but in reality, I was just kind of like tying it together with like some shoestrings. You know what I mean? I was just hoping that whatever was on the other side of like becoming a doctor or becoming a soldier, like I was going to be happy when I made it there. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I was throwing all my happiness over there, and I was doing whatever the price required now to get to that point. Right. And so I made it there, and I realized it costed quite a bit, and it left me with like a lot of questions that I didn't really have answers to. And so really diving into these things is what brought me now, where I really just want to kind of like the area that Irvin was talking about. I want to help other people. I want to help lessen the suffering of others. And I feel like, especially within our culture, there's so many things that that I feel like aren't getting addressed because there's not enough, I guess, from my perspective, right? And this is completely from my perspective. I could be totally wrong about this, but for right now, I've thought it through, and I think it makes sense, at least in my mind. And there's so many people, at least within our culture, that struggle to, find a way out of the cycles that we've kind of found ourselves in, and what I mean by that is like Hispanic pregnancies are the highest in the nation, right? There's a lot of high school dropouts, and the last time I checked, they were kind of increasing a little bit. So feel free to correct me if I'm wrong with that. And I think I was talking to Badelia, which is another one of our brothers from UNL, and when we talked about it in 2015, I think the graduation rate from UNL was like 20% or less than 20% for Latinos in 5 years, right? And so that's already the subsection that makes it to college, right? Because UNL isn't known for having a huge Latino population anyways. And so it's like, it started making me ask a lot of questions, like why, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I've kind of started to see a lot of patterns, and, it really makes me wonder. It's like, yeah, I feel like a lot of our parents come here with the idea like, hey, I want to sacrifice for my kids. I want to sacrifice for my kids, and I'm willing to give up my life for my kids. And I'm not saying that's bad, right? But I am also saying that you can sacrifice for your kids, but you can also pursue the things that make you happy. You know what I mean? Those things are not mutually exclusive, because when you sacrifice everything for your kids, that means you're willing to take anything. And I'm talking about anything. And sometimes it's not always the most glorious job that gives you the best hours. Sometimes it's just what's going to put the food on the table, right? And it's when you kind of acknowledge that, like, you're willing to work 60 hours a week. And Mexicans, like, they have a tremendous work ethic, because I'm not going to take that away from my parents. Like, my dad made sure that I had stuff to eat, right? But that meant that he was gone 6 days out of the week, right? 7 days out of the week, maybe months at a time. Like, I probably saw my dad like after I turned 15, maybe like once a year, because he went to North Dakota to go start working, right? Because that's where the money was, that's where the jobs were, right? But he didn't want to move us. He was like, you guys already have roots there, you know what I mean? Just take advantage of that, because I'm sacrificing this for you. But that's a story that I hear, that at least I've heard from my perspective, right? A lot of times. And that leaves them, because then another thing too is that my parents really kind of put off a lot of, what education, right? What it means to be like a person, what it means to carry yourself through the world. And they kind of like put that off to both religion and school.
Right.
At school, I was supposed to learn how to be a person, right? Because like whatever I was doing at home, it was kid stuff. It wasn't anything that was important, right? But if you think about it, kids are learning how to be adults regardless whether you teach them or not, right? So it's one of those things that they kind of like explore. And so I started seeing that, and like, if all your kids see is you working 60 hours a week, right? And they say that you should value education because it'll get you out of this cycle, but that's what they're hearing, but that's not what they're seeing. And so it's like one of those things. And so kind of like I said, I'm really long-winded, right? But my goal is to try to break that cycle, right? Because that's why I want to go into psychiatry. That's why I want to understand how the mind works and how people, come to these conclusions. And one, not necessarily like just how they come to these conclusions, but also how can we change that, right? How can we get you to understand that, you don't have to pursue this cycle, right? You don't have to go down this path thinking that you have to start working right away, because I know it's hard, and regardless, you're going to have to work. So might as well pursue something that you love, right? Might as well pursue something that's going to make you happy and make you live a long, like, worthy life, regardless of what your parents think, regardless of whoever. Like, what's a good life to you? You know what I mean? That's why, like, I love Irvin's, like, making his own definitions, because it makes sense, right? It gives you that power to kind of take advantage of that. And so that's kind of what, like, my why has evolved into, is like, I want to help people, discover their why, because as I work with my patients, it's not enough to just tell them the right answer, because you can tell them the right answer, but then they won't do it because it's not what they like. They don't like it. Like, it's as simple as that, right? Like, the medication comes with a lot of side effects, but if you give them ownership of what they need to do, maybe there's a difference, right? It's something that they're choosing to do. It's something that they want to do. And if they want to just give up their life, you know what I mean? If they're willing to just live the way they're living, like, who are we to change that, right? And that's a whole nother story, because I want to learn if there's a way to change that. Like, why do people become so stuck in their ways that they're willing to just accept that as reality? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's getting out of the whole what my why is. And my why is just to at least get people that door. You know what I mean?
Right.
Be able to provide that ability of somebody who is like, I'm right at this edge, right? Like, I can go down this path that my parents have, and it sounds good. Or maybe they already have a kid and they're already going down that path, right?
Right.
Because, they're not getting taught what it means to be a father. They're not being taught what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, right? And without the cultural identity attached to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, what does it truly mean to carry yourself through this world? And I feel like that's a lot of things that like, my parents did teach me a lot, but I also didn't listen a lot. I also didn't listen a lot, because, for some reason I felt like I thought I knew more. But now I realize that we all kind of don't know anything at all. And it's one of those things where you kind of explore, right? But they did teach me a lot that I did use. And I've just learned that it was how they were raised, that affects you so much in so many different ways that, like, it's so crazy to understand. It's like, if you get to know your parents' history, you get to know what influenced you. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that's a really important concept. And so, so just open the door for people if they want to pursue something that makes them happy and that is willing to take them down a life that they can create. You know what I mean? Not necessarily have to accept the fact that, oh, this is what success means by somebody else's definition. This is what I need to do. All right, I have to go do it. I don't have a choice. It's one of those things. But
definitely. Good.
That was a long response. I'm sorry.
Hey, like I said, I mean, it's one of the things that we usually, like I said, during one of our workshops is that why? What is that purpose? And I think that with our leadership ambassadors, we have them start practicing that and ask them that. So I think that when I had the opportunity to speak to I guess work with others or to speak with others, they're talking about why and purpose and what have you and values. I then follow with, well, what's your why? Was this? Now, if we were in our full-fledged workshop, I push back on a lot of stuff and be like, well, how come this and how come that? to get you to think even further and be like, whoa, what you mean by that?
Yeah.
On it. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I had an answer that was the right answer for the time. And like I'd go to those workshops and I'd get asked those questions and I would write that on my piece of paper, right? I'd be like,
right.
this is my why. I'm doing it for my family. Or
Definitely.
I'm doing it because I'm a first gen, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to achieve the highest pinnacle of education that I can achieve, that I think is the highest pinnacle, right? Because that's subjective too. But, you know, it was all just the right answer, right? At least what I thought was the right answer. And so it's like, if anybody would have pushed on me, it would have been like the house of cards just kind of tumbling over. Like I would have been like, I don't know, you know,
pass.
I need help. I don't know. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely good.
For sure. And lost my train of thought. No, I was gonna hit on just you know, one of the reasons we started these conversations was because, well, first of all, this whole semester, we're starting from January, we kind of talked on the phone a lot, and we had these kind of conversations, and we're like, well, why don't we record them, put them up, see if other people would be interested in them, and then it gave us an excuse to kind of be able to have these conversations with each other more, because a lot of the times we don't have a lot of opportunities to just do this normally, right? Like, you have to build some sort of connection with people in order to even begin to discuss some of the things that we've been discussing. So we're like, we wanted to get better at telling our own story, telling our own views, telling just getting our thoughts out of our mind for a second, because sometimes they just kind of whirl around and then you kind of get lost in there. So this was our way to kind of put everything out there and be like, okay, I think it makes kind of sense now. So that's kind of why we started this whole thing. And we also we talked about, like, Yair and I, about how we don't see a lot of people that look like us be successful, or whatever quote unquote successful is. Like, I didn't have a teacher that was a person of color until I got to college, right? And it's like, and then, so at times, you know, when we talk to each other, you know, we're kind of discouraged. We're like, well, we want to get to where we want to get, because we want to just show people that it's possible, right? Because a lot of times we just don't feel like it's possible, because we see all these other people get represented in these quote unquote big jobs or stuff like that. But it's like, why can't I ever see someone that looks like me up there? So I know, especially in his last year here at the undergrad, we kind of wanted to do a little bit more to give back to students, because, like we were saying, we just don't see a lot of people like us get to even to college, right? So we wanted to be able to kind of just be a voice of reason, I guess. Not even reason, just an example of, be like, look, if we can do it, trust me, you can do it. Type of thing. So yeah, I mean, I agree with what he's saying. And you know, he kind of hit on it a little bit. We grew up very differently, and we kind of talk about this all the time. We've came to the same conclusion as to kind of why we want to do things and kind of where we're going from here, but we got to it in very different ways. So we love to just kind of explore off of each other, because, you know, just like everybody else, everybody has their own life. You know, everybody lives their own journey. So you know, someone else always knows something that you don't. So so that's kind of why we chose to learn off of each other, and why we like bringing other people in, because I think that's the way him and I learn the best, is through other people's experiences as well.
I think, and what you say best, right? And how do we help others, right? I think the biggest thing is, how do you help those who are behind you, right? And I think when you think of the fraternity, right, you essentially become a mentor to an aspiring member. And so when you think of that, is how can I help you, you know, get to the finish line? How do I get you to become a brother of the organization? But I think that as upperclassmen, or as alum, and as you maneuver through the next phase of life, is how do I help those behind me still get to their finish line, right? And so I think that now, if we stick to the role of the chapter, now that there's another Latino fraternity on the campus, right, is figuring out, hey, whatever decision you make, but let me be a big brother to you. Let me help you out when the times get hard. Kind of stuff, because you from a small town, I'm from a small town. You from a big city, I'm from a big city. You from somewhere in the Midwest, cool, I got you. You're first gen, I'm first gen. We still gotta help each other out. Honest. And I think that as you do that, you're doing just that. You're helping each other out, right? There'd be a single parent house to a mixed family home to a full house of not just your immediate family, but you may have an aunt and uncle and cousins with you at all time, right? But I think that you do this, and I think that we, as within the Latino culture, what we do is that we bond together over familia, right? And not just over familia, but over food. So getting together and being like, yo, I can't go home, but yo, I can make some bomb-ass enchiladas. Cool, I can make some frijoles. You can make the rice the right way. So let's break bread together, right? And I say it because I think that as masa, we would always joke around and be like, you can pay dues all you want, but you're not a real member until you make enchiladas and participate in the enchilada fundraiser. On that, but I think that bond, you know, regardless of what you join or what you do while we're college students together, it's how can I help you, one, remain at school so that we can, you know, help each other out, get that little piece of paper that we're all wanting to get for the reason why we got here on it, but at the same time figure out how can I be that big brother, little brother, big brother, big sister, little sister, or just overall your cousin from a different family. How can I be that primo to be like, yo, I got you while you're here, I got you. You miss home, I got leftovers. The kind of stuff. Let's make it happen, right? And I joke around because an old coworker of mine, every time I would go home and come back, she'd be like, "You brought me tortillas, right?" I go, "I'll share some, but they're really mine. I'll give you like one or two. That's it." But you think about, you know, how can I help those that, hey, my house is open. Like my parents may say, "Hey, come on over," right? I think for a while there, I would have some of the brothers over my house just to do a quick kickback, but that'd be it. Kind of stuff too. They're really saying, hey, when I advised our University of Kansas chapter for Thanksgiving, we would get together at my place and say, all right, gentlemen, let's get together. Like, bring what you can. If you know how to throw down, cool. If you need to go to the store and buy Super Saver wings, or at the time Dylan's wings, then get what you got to do. Just go somewhere and get it. Bring it. We're breaking bread together all the time, and kind of stuff. So I think you create that family so that you can say, these are my people. You know, regardless of what we share, what we have, we're gonna get to the finish line together.
Absolutely.
Food goes a long way.
Definitely goes a long way, especially if you know someone especially you got someone that knows somebody that can really throw down. Oh
yeah, we used to throw down a lot of carne asadas out, especially when it started getting nicer out.
I forgot who was making something. I was like, y'all gonna send me a plate. I'm on the
way. It makes me miss those, man. I didn't know how good I had it until I left.
Bro, look, I've been gone for 10 years. I still don't know. Like, granted, for me, I mean, my partner is from the Valley in Texas, right? From the RGV. Shout out, right? And so definitely blessed that she can throw down on the stove with the food that she makes. Because is that little things are home away from home, and I'm like, hey, as long as we can make these homemade tortillas, we're set. But 10 minutes from the house, we have our Mexican supermarket. That's our panaderia, carniceria, restaurant, grocery store, and everything. So trust. We're gonna find what we have, and if we need to get menudo Sunday mornings, we're gonna get our menudo on Sunday mornings. On the pan dulce, carne, what you need, I mean, we can make it happen.
Oh man, that's dope.
Always.
We've had to learn how to make like all the dishes. Like I think like 2 weeks ago, we tried to make tacos al pastor in the oven. Oh man, that was an experience, dude. we try to have it stacked up all the way, and apparently I didn't learn anything in physics class because the shit like fell over in the oven. It was hilarious. It was an experience. So I'm working on it, but one of these days I'm gonna perfect this recipe, and it's gonna be some dope ass tacos, man.
There you go.
Well, yeah, you got any more questions, or else I'd like to thank Juan for his time. We've kind of kept you here for a while already.
Yeah. No way, it's bad time after this, so.
Let me see. I think, well, one, definitely appreciate, you taking the time to come in and talk to us. I think it's been really wonderful to know the man behind the mystery. It's been it's been quite the exploration, but I think if you, let's see, so I know you did talk a lot about your journey, but I guess I want to make sure that I got this nice and clear. So like, what is your why? So I wanted to ask you that question specifically because I know like, I feel like you've kind of beaten around the bush a little bit about how you got to where you are, but like, what is the thing that wakes you up in the morning? You know what I'm saying? Like, what is the thing that keeps you moving forward? Like, what's your vision? What's the impact you want to have on the world, to the students around you? You know what I mean? So like, what is that for you?
Right. And it's been a long time since I got asked my why, right? But I think ultimately my why is to assist our men of color, and specifically our Latino men, navigate the institution of higher education and understanding what their role is on the college campus, but at the same time, make sure that their story is told from who they are and from their role, and ultimately crossing the stage on their time to earn that little piece of paper that means so much to so many. And so with that, my role and my why is to really assist our Latino male college students get to that stage, to get that little piece of paper, and to really truly answer the ultimate question of who they are. And so that is my why. Sounds very scripted, but I think that's something that, as like I said, we do this workshop, so that's my purpose. But I think for me, really working with our Latino students, and I think that as we have shared in this virtual realm, is what is your story, and you being able to verbally state it from your narrative and your personal point of view, right? And not letting me say, well, let me tell you about Irvin, let me tell you about Yayi, let me tell you about these other brothers, and what have you, until your story for you. Like being able to tell that story. Because like I said, like we said at the very beginning, who are you? Right? Easy question, but it is the most complex answer, because it's just like an interview. Tell me about yourself. Well, what you want to know about you? Kind of stuff. But as we think of this, it's helping our Latino, especially for me, our Latino male college students, to say, tell me who you are. Who are you? Tell me about your experiences. Tell me about your life. How can I help you get there? Because ultimately, we say at the college level, we want you to get that piece of paper. We want to get you to, one, we got you for recruitment. Now we got to keep you for the next 3-4 years with the retention side, and now we got to get you to graduation. So while administrator cap on is, I need to make sure that you as a college student graduate in 4 years and 5 years, no more than 6, because you're gonna mess up metrics, and that's how we get measured, and that's how we get funding and overall great. But that admin cap off, then as a Latino male administrator, as a staff member, it's let me build this connect with you if I can, right? And I say this with my mentee, if you allow me to be involved with you and allow me to be involved in your life, then how can I help you navigate your way through the college campus? And like I said earlier, if I'm just going to be your cheerleader, cool. I will cheer you on from the beginning to the end. If you want to be that raw and mentor that's going to tell you how it is, and you be like that parent, like yell at you, why did you fall down? I'm going to be that parent that's going to yell at you, why you're going to fall down. And I think that a brother exposed me to his parents because of a story I shared with them. And I was like, really? You go tell your parents what I told you? You're not supposed to say that's you and I. And it's not so much. It was at a graduation, and so he was even a speaker. And I was like, bro, that was me. Like nobody. Yeah, and I'm looking at the parents' table like, yeah, sorry. Like, walk away. But I think that, as I say, is because I think that if you allow me that, and we can build this relationship, is then how can I help you make sure, one, you have your identity, and you know your story, your upbringing, and depending on how much you edit, cool, but it's you making those edits. But at the same time, it's you remembering, why do you want this piece of paper? What does it mean so much? Is it something that you are earning for you, yourself, and you. It's something that we as Latinos, it's family, right? It's something that I and my family are earning together, right? And you know, regardless or not, they are on this journey with us together. Especially as the first gen, they are on this journey with us. And I joke around and tell my wife that, hey, when I cross this stage with this final piece of paper, with this final papelito and these 3 letters behind my name, like it's literally you, me, and the kids that earned this, right? And she just laughs. I'm like, no, the research says like it's family, your family, like you've been editing this with me. Honest, but then ultimately it's, we will get to this piece of paper together, kind of stuff. Like we will make this happen, and we will make sure that you get there. If you got to take 12 hours, cool. If you got to take 9 to go part-time, fantastic. Let's get you to where you need to be. You got questions about financial aid? I ain't got the answers, but I know somebody. Let's get you to where you need to be, or what you got to do. You know, questions about housing? I don't know. I ain't know it. Let's figure this out, right? I stayed at home the entire time I was at UNL. I don't know. So let's get you there to where you need to be. But I think ultimately it's that. So every day when I get up, it's how can I help out my Latino male students, or just students of color overall, navigate these pieces. When I go to sleep, it's that reflection of did I do enough? Even if I touched to one student, even if it's via text, that I talked to one of my mentees or one of my students, at least I made contact throughout the week. And sometimes, like especially right now when this pandemic, I don't get to see them face to face. A text may tell me something different from what they're feeling. So I just got to go based on, hey, call me, like let me know you're good. Because I think that ultimately with these established relationships is, hey, let's make it happen. Let's do what we got to do. And I think back to all the mentors I've had, to all the I guess the upperclassmen when I was a fledgling undergrad at UNL. But everyone that looked out for me, that did the same thing for me, that I'm just paying it forward and still paying it forward many, many, many years later as I go through this overall. And if they want to have real raw conversations, well, let's have real raw conversations about all this stuff. That's this thing that you know, as everyone says, that this thing that we call life. How can we enjoy it, play it, and, you know, be vulnerable all the way around with it through our multiple identities?
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like it sounds like you got like a really kind of well thought out. You put some time into thinking that one through. So thank you. You know, I really appreciate that, because I think I heard a lot that I definitely related to, and a lot that I don't hear a lot of people say. You know what I mean? Like the part about helping somebody discover who they truly are and the things that matter to them. I think that's a really important part about being a mentor, and that's something that I think is really cool that you're doing out here with your students, because it's, you know, it's important. You know, that's awesome. You know, I think it's really cool, and I think it's you know, it makes a difference in people's lives for sure.
Right.
So, it's incredible, man. Thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, I appreciate how much I'm gonna have to think about now. Especially, you know, once I edit this and I watch it back or whatever, I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna be taking so many notes. Like right now, I just like to listen, you know, be engaged, but later on, lots of note taking.
There's some knowledge in these words.
Oh,
no, that's awesome. That's incredible.
But yeah, I believe that's all we've got for you. You know, again, we do very much appreciate you taking some time out to kind of meet with us, because at the end of the day, this was just as much of a whim for you as it was for us. You know, you never met us either, so
right.
So obviously you still came out, and we appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, I don't know.
No, like I said, you know, in honor of one that, you know, that was considered. Two, same thing. I don't think we've crossed paths that when I've gone to campus. On it, I was talking with my wife. I think the only person I interviewed on your whole line was what's this day? Isaac.
Isaac, yeah, of course it was.
Yeah, of course it was, man.
Right. I think the overachiever and stuff like that. And so, but even now, like I think as I look at posts of the current bros and stuff like that, I'm like, I don't know these kids. And all this kind of stuff. I'm like, I think as all of you are starting to graduate and leave, I'm like, was the last of my last connects to the undergrad chapter. I'm like, I don't know these kids. Cool, this and that. I'm gonna just show up to a chapter meeting and be like that odd guy, the old man in the back, and be like, bros, what's up? I got no letters on, but here we are. On it, but I think, right, just like Ruben, right? But I think it's just that, I think it's the fun piece. It's always connecting back, right? To for me, it's I do what Urban does. I sit back and listen to those stories, right? If I have the opportunity to sit with older generation of students, I want to hear their stories. I want to hear everything. And I look at it from a fraternity point of view, right? Going to one of our conventions and meeting, older brothers than me, right? The late 80s, early 90s brothers. But you hear that, and you've read our story. You've met with some of us founding line, and you hear what we went through back in the 97, 98. But then when you meet this brother, say, oh yeah, there was interest at University of Nebraska in like 92. 93, and you're like, what? We could have been a single letter chapter. We could. This is me, right? I didn't have to go through all this stuff to start something with the kid. Like we could have just like pledged and joined. What? But then you're like, well, okay, so something must have happened, because you're like, yo, and you meet these brothers that are talking about people that you knew through Masa, and you're like, yo, they're like Masa alum. Like, how do you know this? And you're like, what? And so, but I think sitting down with those individuals, and there's a gamma I joke around with, because I say she kidnapped me, because we were at a national event, and literally it was 4 of us, and the 3 others were like, I'm talking about like pledged in 86, 90, 92, and this and like early. And I was the youngest one in the 98 initiate, and I'm like, hey, I'm the youngest one. And I'm sitting there like, tell me more. How was it like? Like, yo, like, how'd you communicate? Because y'all didn't have no cell phones. but then I'm like, yeah, but when I came through, to get a hold of me, you had to call me on the house phone. So my parents were picking up. Can I speak with Pachuco? Who? But I think it's always great to connect with y'all younger brothers and this and that. So definitely a good time on the time that we had together, and best of luck with everything, with the next chapter with both of y'all studies and what y'all doing. So I know that medical school ain't no punk, because there's a beta here at FAU Medical School who I think he starts his 5th year this semester, and physically I've seen him maybe like 3 times on campus. But yeah, so I know it's tough. So I think the best as y'all maneuver this next stuff, and of course remaining safe during this pandemic.
For sure. Well, once again, thank you, and we'll let you go. We'll go let you have your bath time or whatever you were going.
Right, yeah, because gotta go bathe these kids so they can go to sleep. I got my own homework I gotta focus on now.
Exactly. Well, have a good night.
All right, gentlemen, have a good one.
See you.
All right.
Thank you.